My sister scheduled her vow renewal on my wedding day because we booked first. My fiancée and I didn't fight, move the date, or call a single relative. 84 guests chose. Her photographer posted the empty aisle before we even cut the cake. I'm not the kind of guy who makes scenes. I want to get that out of the way early because some of what I'm about to tell you sounds like I orchestrated some kind of revenge plot. I didn't. I just stopped volunteering to be the reasonable one. My name's Ethan. I'm 31, mechanical engineer, live outside Richmond, Virginia. I proposed to my girlfriend Claire in March after 4 years together. Nothing flashy. I took her to this little overlook where we had our first real date. Got down on one knee in the mud because it had rained that morning, and I hadn't thought that part through, and she said yes before I even got the ring out of my pocket. That's Claire. She doesn't need the production. She just needs the thing to be real. We started planning the wedding almost immediately. Claire is a pediatric occupational therapist, so she's organized by nature. Within 2 weeks, we had a venue locked down, Millstone Farm, this restored barn property, about 40 minutes outside the city. Late September date, we told both families the same week we booked it. My parents said, "Congratulations." My sister Vanessa said, "September, that's going to be so hot." And that, looking back, was the first flag I ignored. I need to explain Vanessa. She's 5 years older than me. She's not a monster. She's not some cartoon villain who twirls her hair and plots my downfall. She's just someone who has always needed to be the center of every room she walks into. And when she's not, she finds a way to make it your fault. Quick example, when I graduated from Virginia Tech, magna cum laude, mechanical engineering, which if you know anything about that program, you know is not easy. My parents hosted a small cookout to celebrate. Vanessa came, gave me a card, and then spent most of the afternoon telling everyone about the kitchen renovation she and Brandon were doing. By the end of the day, 3 different relatives asked me how the renovation was going. Nobody asked about my job offers. I don't think Vanessa planned that. She just has a gravity that pulls every conversation toward her, and my family has spent decades orbiting it. She got married 5 years ago to her husband, Brandon. Nice enough guy, quiet, the kind of person who says whatever you want, babe, to everything and means it. Their wedding was a full production, 200 guests, custom invitations, a 12-piece band. My parents covered most of it. I didn't mind at the time. I was 26, not even dating Claire yet, and I figured when my turn came around things would be fair. My parents are Hank and Judith. Dad's a retired electrician. He's the kind of man who shows love by fixing things and showing up, but he will go to almost any length to avoid a confrontation. Mom is the engine. She runs the family calendar, mediates every dispute, and has spent the last 30 years managing Vanessa's feelings because it's easier than listening to the fallout when she doesn't. Somewhere along the way, that became the family operating system. Vanessa has emotions. Everyone adjusts, and I get told to be the bigger person because I'm the one who can handle it. For the record, I can handle it. I just got tired of being the only one who's expected to. Anyway, the engagement was great. Claire's parents were thrilled. They offered to help with costs. My parents said they'd contribute too. Dad pulled me aside at a family dinner and said, "We helped Vanessa, we'll help you. It's only fair." He mentioned a number. It was generous. I thanked him, told him we'd keep things reasonable, and that was that. For about 6 weeks, everything was normal. We were picking colors, tasting catering samples, arguing about whether a photo booth was tacky or fun. Normal wedding stuff. Claire's best friend, Jasmine, was the maid of honor. My buddy Ty, we've been friends since freshman year, was best man. Life was good. Then one Sunday in May, we were at my parents' house for dinner. Vanessa and Brandon were there. Mum had made her brisket, which she only does for what she considers important occasions, which should have been my second flag. We were clearing plates when Vanessa tapped her fork against her water glass like she was at a banquet. "Brandon and I have an announcement," she said. Everyone stopped. Brandon smiled, that vague smile he does when he's been coached. "We're doing a vow renewal." Mom clasped her hands together. Dad nodded approvingly. I said, "Congratulations." Claire said something sweet about how that was a beautiful way to celebrate 5 years. Then Vanessa said the date, September 21st. I actually didn't react at first. My brain just kind of buffered because September 21st was our wedding date. Claire's hand found my knee under the table and squeezed. "Vanessa," I said, "that's our wedding." She barely looked up from her phone. "I know it's the same weekend, but we actually booked the church before you booked your barn." She said, "Yeah, it's the same weekend. But Brandon and I booked the church before you ever booked your barn. We paid our deposit in February. And we announced our date in March." I said, "Everyone already knew our wedding date." She shrugged and replied, "Announcing a date isn't the same as booking a venue." Then she gave me a tight little smile and added, "I'm sure people can make it work. They're different places, and they're at different times of the day." I looked at my mum. This was supposed to be the moment she stepped in. She was supposed to tell Vanessa she was being ridiculous and to pick another weekend. Instead, my mum took a sip of her iced tea and said, "I think it could work if we coordinate the timing." Right then, I realized she already knew. She hadn't just found out at dinner. She'd known for weeks and never said a word to me. Claire and I drove home mostly in silence. Not the angry kind, just the kind where you're both trying to process everything. About halfway home, on that empty stretch of Route 60 with nothing but farmland and a few gas stations, Claire finally spoke. "Did you see your mom's face when Vanessa announced the date?" she asked. She wasn't surprised. I kept my eyes on the road and said, "No, she wasn't." Claire nodded. She already knew, Ethan. She sat there acting like it was news, even though she'd known the whole time. "Yeah," was all I could say. After another mile, Claire asked, "So what do we do?" I thought about it for a long time. As I drove, I kept thinking about all the times I'd been expected to step aside, be reasonable, and let Vanessa have her way. Finally, I said, "Nothing yet." Over the next couple of weeks, I tried handling it directly. I called Vanessa and asked if she'd move her vow renewal by just 1 week. She said the church only had that Saturday available for the next 3 months. I asked if she'd looked at another venue. She said the church meant too much to her, and she wasn't changing her plans because I'd picked a barn. I said, "Vanessa, this is our wedding, not a barbecue." She answered, "And this is our marriage. 5 years is a milestone, Ethan. I'm sorry if you feel overshadowed, but I can't put my life on hold because of your timeline." That sentence stuck with me. My timeline? She acted like I'd planned my engagement just to inconvenience her. After that, I called my mum. I stayed calm. I didn't yell or try to make her feel guilty. I simply asked, "Did you know about Vanessa's date before dinner?" She paused before saying, "Vanessa told me she wanted September. I said it might be difficult, but she really wanted that weekend." I asked, "Why didn't you tell me?" She replied, "I didn't want to start a fight before there was anything to fight about." I said, "Mum, there was something to fight about." She let out one of her usual sighs and said, "Ethan, you know how Vanessa is. If I'd pushed back, she would have thought I was taking your side. I just thought if everyone planned carefully—" I cut her off. "Planned for what? So people can go to 2 events 40 minutes apart on the same day?" She answered, "People do that all the time with graduations and other family events." I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because comparing my wedding to 2 school ceremonies was exactly the kind of thing my mum would say. In the end, I let it go. Not because I agreed with her, but because I'd learned a long time ago that arguing with my mom about Vanessa never changed anything. It was like arguing with the weather. You don't stop the storm, you just decide whether you're going outside. Then things got even worse. About a week later, I texted my dad about the wedding budget. Back in April, he'd told me they were giving us $15,000, the same amount they'd given Vanessa for her wedding 5 years earlier. Claire and I weren't depending on it for everything, but we'd planned our catering upgrade and open bar around that promise. Instead of texting back, Dad called me. That immediately felt wrong because he almost never called. He'd rather send 7 text messages than make 1 phone call. The second I saw his name on my screen, I knew something had changed. He sounded uncomfortable. "Ethan, we need to talk about the wedding money." I said, "Okay." After a pause, he said, "Your mom and I talked, and Vanessa's vow renewal has expenses we didn't expect. The church, the reception, the catering. She asked if we could help." I stayed quiet and waited. Then he said, "We're going to split the money. We'll give you $7,500 and Vanessa the other $7,500. I let the silence sit for a moment before saying, "You promised me $15,000. That's the same amount you gave Vanessa for her actual wedding." He sighed. "I know, and I'm sorry. Your mother feels we should support both events equally." I said, "Equally? Dad, one of those events is my wedding. The other is a party Vanessa decided to schedule on the same day." He didn't have an answer. All I could hear was him breathing on the other end of the phone. Finally, he said, "I'll talk to your mom again." He never did. Or maybe he did, but nothing changed. The next week, I got a Venmo transfer for $7,500. I showed it to Claire. She looked at the amount, then at me, and asked, "Are you okay?" "Not really." She asked, "What do you want to do?" Most people probably think this is where I lost my temper or started planning some big revenge. I didn't. I sat on the back porch with a beer and thought about it for a long time. The money bothered me, but that wasn't the worst part. The real problem was the math. My parents gave Vanessa $15,000 for her wedding. Now they were giving her another $7,500 for a vow renewal. That meant she'd gotten $22,500 total. I was getting $7,500 for my only wedding. Somehow my mom still called that equal. That night, I called my Uncle Victor, my dad's younger brother. He retired from the Navy and now runs a property management company about an hour south of us. Uncle Victor is the only person in the family who always says exactly what's on his mind, which is probably why my mum can only handle him in small doses. I told him everything. He listened without interrupting, which for him meant he knew it was serious. When I finished, he said, "Your sister's always been something else, but this takes it to another level. What's your plan?" I said, "I don't have one yet." He replied, "Good, don't make a plan while you're angry. Make a smart one." That night, Claire and I sat at the kitchen table and talked it through. Not emotionally, but logically. We asked ourselves one question. What do we actually want? We didn't want revenge. We didn't want a family fight. We just wanted our wedding day to belong to us, surrounded by people who truly wanted to be there. That's when we came up with an idea. It was simple. We weren't going to pressure anyone, argue, or make people choose. We were just going to give everyone a choice. The only challenge was doing it in a way that nobody, especially Vanessa, could twist against us. If there was one thing I knew about my sister, it was that she could turn herself into the victim no matter what happened. Whatever we did had to be completely fair and impossible to misrepresent. Claire opened her laptop. "I think I know how to word it," she said. She spent about 10 minutes typing, deleting, and rewriting before turning the screen toward me. I read it twice and smiled. "That's perfect." She closed the laptop and said, "Not yet, we wait." I asked, "Wait for what?" She answered, "For them to get comfortable. Vanessa thinks she's already won. Let her keep believing that." That's when I knew all over again that I'd chosen the right woman. For the next month and a half, Claire and I did the one thing that drove Ty completely crazy. We acted like everything was normal. We went to family dinners and smiled. Every time Vanessa talked about her vow renewal, which happened almost every visit, showing fabric samples or debating between two nearly identical shades of ivory, we politely nodded. When my mom talked about helping Vanessa plan the reception menu, I simply said it sounded nice. When Brandon asked if I was okay with everything, I patted him on the shoulder and said, "It's all good, man." One dinner was especially difficult. Vanessa brought her laptop and started showing pictures from the church's website, scrolling through photos of weddings held there. "Look at those ceilings," she said. "You don't get that in a barn." She never looked directly at me, but she didn't have to. My mom quietly said the architecture was beautiful. Under the table, Claire squeezed my hand. That was our signal that she was doing everything she could not to say what she was really thinking. I just asked if anyone wanted more salad. Ty kept texting me, "Bro, when are you finally going to say something?" Then another message. "If you let this go, I'm staging an intervention." I told him to trust me. He said he did, but watching all this was driving him crazy. Behind the scenes, Claire and I were working on two things. First, we adjusted our wedding budget. Losing $7,500 meant giving up the open bar and sticking with beer and wine. We also downgraded the catering package. It wasn't what we wanted, but we made it work. Claire's parents quietly offered to cover the difference. We thanked them and accepted. I couldn't help noticing that the first people to help us were the ones who'd never made promises in the first place. The second thing we did was finish our plan for communicating with our guests. Here's what people don't understand about situations like this. When someone pulls something this selfish, they're expecting you to explode. They expect angry phone calls, family arguments, and ultimatums. Then they get to tell everyone you're the difficult one. Their whole plan depends on you reacting. So we didn't react. We changed the game. In early August, about 7 weeks before both events, Claire and I sat down together and finalized our complete guest list. There were about 90 people invited to both our wedding and Vanessa's vow renewal. Family, mutual friends, and people my parents knew. 90 people who were about to get 2 invitations for the same Saturday. Claire and I wrote one message. We didn't send a group text or a mass email. We used our wedding website and sent it through the RSVP system, personalized with each guest's name. It said, "Hi, name." We know September 21st has become a busy day for our family. Vanessa and Brandon's vow renewal and our wedding are both happening that Saturday, and we completely understand if you decide to attend only one. We love you and want you wherever you'll be happiest. No pressure and no hard feelings either way. If you'd like to celebrate with us at Millstone Farm, here's our RSVP link. We'd love to have you, but we'll care about you either way. That was it. No drama, no explanation, no guilt. Just the facts and the RSVP link. We didn't send it to my parents because they'd already made their choice by paying for both events and refusing to step in. We assumed they'd be at Vanessa's. That was fine. We also didn't send it to Brandon's family since they weren't invited to our wedding. We only contacted the people who'd been invited to both events. Meanwhile, Vanessa went all out. She hired a photographer, booked a string quartet, ordered centerpieces, and my mum helped her with the seating chart. Every Sunday dinner turned into another update about the vow renewal. Every Sunday, I sat there, ate my pot roast, and never mentioned what Claire and I had done. Claire deserved an award for keeping a straight face. One night, Vanessa was showing everyone the ceremony program she'd printed. Claire looked at me with that little expression only I understood. It basically said, if she says our special day one more time, I'm going to lose it. By the middle of August, the RSVPs started coming in. I checked the numbers every night, not because I was obsessed, just because I was curious. The pattern became obvious fast. After the first week, we had 42 confirmed guests. By the second week, it was 61. People were answering quickly, which told me they'd been waiting for someone to give them permission to choose. Vanessa either wasn't paying close attention to her RSVPs or she wasn't saying anything. She kept posting countdowns on Instagram with captions like 6 weeks until our special day, followed by heart emojis. At one family dinner, she said she'd heard from tons of people and everyone was excited. I just smiled and passed the green beans. One Saturday, Ty came over to help me with yard work, and I showed him our RSVP count. He stared at the screen for a few seconds. "Dude, how many does Vanessa have?" he asked. "No idea," I said. "But there are 90 shared guests, and we've already got 67 confirmed." He did the math in his head. So she's got maybe 20 at best, assuming everyone else goes to her. I nodded. He sat down on the porch steps and looked at me. "You never called anyone?" "No." "You never talked bad about her?" "Nope." "You just let people choose?" I said. "We just told them to go wherever they be happiest." He shook his head. "Your fiancé is terrifying, and I mean that as a compliment." 3 days before the RSVP deadline, Vanessa texted me. "Hope wedding planning is going well. Can't wait for the big weekend. It's going to be so fun having 2 celebrations." Then she sent another message. "Good luck with your little thing." Your little thing. I showed Claire. She read it, set my phone down, and went right back to writing thank you cards. "Not worth our energy," she said. She was right. The numbers would speak for themselves. The RSVP deadline ended on a Tuesday night at midnight. I was still awake finishing a work report, so before going to bed, I refreshed the page one last time. 84 confirmed guests. Out of about 90 people invited to both events, 84 had chosen our wedding. I checked the numbers twice just to be sure. Even if almost all of the remaining 6 went to Vanessa, plus Brandon's family and friends, she'd probably end up with only 20 to 25 guests for the event she'd planned like a second wedding. I sat there staring at the screen for a while. I didn't feel like I'd won. It wasn't victory. It felt more like validation. The people in our lives had seen exactly what was happening, and nobody had needed us to explain it. I told Claire the next morning. She looked at the RSVP count, closed her eyes for a second, and said, "I'm glad people saw the truth." After that, we never checked the numbers again. We had more important things to worry about. The last 3 weeks flew by. We had venue walkthroughs, seating charts, final fittings, and all the last-minute details. Claire's dress was perfect. I don't usually pay much attention to clothes, but when she came out after her final fitting to ask what I thought about the hem, I actually had to sit down. I know I wasn't supposed to see it before the wedding, but she wanted my opinion. Ty never let me live that down, and honestly, I didn't care. During those weeks, things with my family changed a little. My mum called me twice about the schedule. She wanted to know what time our ceremony started so she and Dad could attend both events. I told her ours started at 4 in the afternoon. She said Vanessa's vow renewal was at 2, so they go there first and then drive over. "That's your choice, Mum," I said. She replied, "I just don't want anyone to feel left out." I answered, "No one is being left out. Everyone was invited to both. People are just choosing where they want to be." She was quiet for a moment before saying, "Some of your cousins told Vanessa they can't make the vow renewal. She's pretty upset." I almost asked how many, but I stopped myself. It wasn't my business anymore. "I'm sorry to hear that," was all I said. That same week, Uncle Victor called me. He'd RSVP'd to our wedding within 20 minutes of getting our message back in August. He said he'd heard Vanessa's RSVP numbers weren't looking good. "How bad?" I asked. "Your Aunt Patricia told me Vanessa called her crying because half the family picked your wedding. Now she's saying you turned everyone against her." I said, "I sent one polite message." Uncle Victor laughed. "I know, I read it. It was the nicest knife I've ever seen." Then he added, "She's telling your mom you started a smear campaign." "What's Mom saying?" I asked. He laughed again. "The same thing she always says, that you should have moved your wedding to keep the peace." I just let that sink in. After everything that had happened, my mum still thought I was the one who should have given in. "Well," I said, "it's a little late for that." Uncle Victor replied, "Yeah, it is. Your barn's going to be full, kid. Enjoy every second of it." The week of the wedding, Vanessa made one last move. She posted a long Facebook message about celebrating real, lasting love and being thankful for the people who truly show up when it matters. It sounded inspirational, but anyone who knew what was happening understood exactly what she meant. She was calling everyone who chose our wedding disloyal. Claire read it and simply said, "Bless her heart." I didn't reply. Nobody in my family did. The post got 14 likes, and I didn't even recognize most of the names. That Thursday, Ty and I went to Millstone Farm for the final walkthrough. The barn looked amazing. Claire and her mom had spent weeks putting everything together: string lights, wildflowers, long farmhouse tables. Nothing flashy, just warm, simple, and perfect. Ty looked around and said, "If I ever get married, I want this exact setup, except with a disc jockey who takes requests." I laughed. "Claire already banned the Cupid Shuffle." He nodded. "Then she's a genius." That night I couldn't sleep. It wasn't because I was nervous about getting married. I kept thinking about my parents sitting in a church that afternoon, watching Vanessa walk down the aisle again after 5 years, then driving 40 minutes to watch me do it for the first and only time. I wondered how many empty seats would be in that church. I wondered if my mum would notice. I wondered if my dad would say anything. I finally fell asleep around 1 in the morning. When I woke up on Friday, I had a text from Vanessa. It only said, "Tomorrow is going to be perfect." She was right, just not for the reason she thought. Saturday morning, September 21st, my wedding day, I got ready at Ty's apartment because it was closer to the venue. We put on our suits, argued over pocket squares, and ate breakfast tacos from a food truck Ty insisted on finding. The weather was beautiful, cool, clear, and in the low 70s. It was one of those perfect fall mornings. Around noon, Claire sent me a picture of her hand holding a coffee mug that said, "Future Mrs." Her mum had given it to her that morning. I sent back a picture of Ty trying to iron his shirt on the kitchen counter. She replied with a laughing emoji and wrote, "See you at the altar, engineer." At 2 o'clock, while we were loading the car with garment bags and gift baskets, Vanessa's vow renewal began at Grace Community Church. I knew because my mum sent me a picture of the pews. I don't think my mum meant anything by it. It was just one of those automatic things mums do when they share a moment. But when I looked at the picture, I saw the church. The decorations were beautiful: white roses, candles, and a runner down the center aisle. The problem was the seats. They weren't completely empty, but they were mostly empty. Maybe 24 people were there, spread out across a church that seated 180. Entire rows were empty, except for the programs. I stared at the picture for a few seconds, then slipped my phone back into my pocket. "You good?" Ty asked. "Yeah," I said. "Let's go get married." Our wedding turned out exactly the way we wanted. 84 guests filled the barn at Millstone Farm, and it felt perfect. Not too crowded and not too empty, just full of people who truly wanted to celebrate with us. Claire walked down the aisle to a string version of a song we'd picked together. I wish I could say I held it together, but I didn't. Ty quietly handed me a tissue without saying a word, which was the most Ty thing ever. We exchanged vows, slipped on our rings, and when the officiant announced we were married, the whole barn erupted. Not like in the movies, just honest applause, happy cheers, an aunt crying, and someone whistling way too loudly. It was perfect. The reception was just as amazing. Claire's parents gave a toast that had everyone laughing 1 minute and crying the next. Ty's best man speech was about 60% making fun of me and 40% heartfelt, exactly how I expected it. Later, Uncle Victor pulled me aside. "Your mum and dad got here about 45 minutes ago," he said. "They came from the church. I'd already noticed they'd arrived during cocktail hour, about an hour after our ceremony. Dad gave me a hug. Mum hugged me too, but I could feel how tense she was. "Congratulations, sweetheart," she said. She sounded sincere, but her eyes kept moving around the room like she was counting who showed up. I didn't ask about the vow renewal, and she didn't bring it up. The rest of the night was incredible. We danced, ate, and cut the cake, while Ty tried to start a chant that thankfully never caught on. Around 9 o'clock, Claire kicked off her shoes and never put them back on. Her college friends dragged her onto the dance floor, and seeing her laugh like that, surrounded by people who loved her, became my favorite memory of the whole day. Around 10 that night, while the reception was still going, Ty showed me something on his phone. Someone had tagged him in a post after seeing Vanessa's photographer's Instagram story. The photographer had posted a beautiful picture of the church with the flowers, candles, and mostly empty seats. The caption said, "When the venue's this gorgeous, who needs a crowd?" Followed by a skull emoji. I honestly don't think the photographer knew anything about the situation. She was probably just joking. But someone in our extended family took a screenshot and started sending it around. By the time Ty showed me, it had already made its way through several family group chats. I looked at the picture, handed the phone back, and said, "Don't show Claire tonight." Of course, she found out the next morning anyway. Her maid of honor, Jasmine, showed it to her while we were packing up the gifts. Claire looked at it for a moment and quietly said, "That photographer had no idea what she was walking into." "No," I said. "She didn't." Then I added, "I almost feel bad for Vanessa." Claire smiled. Almost. The fallout came fast. Vanessa called my mom Sunday morning crying. I know because a little later my mom called me, and she definitely wasn't crying. She was furious. "What did you do?" she demanded the second I answered. "Good morning, Mum." "The wedding was wonderful. Thanks for asking." "Ethan, your sister is devastated. Do you know how many people came to her vow renewal?" 11. 11 people. Most of them were Brandon's family. Now that photographer's picture is everywhere and people are laughing at her. I said, "I didn't take that picture. I didn't post it and I didn't share it." "You turned the family against her." "How?" I asked. "What exactly did I do?" She went silent because she couldn't point to anything. I hadn't called anyone. I hadn't complained online. I hadn't posted on social media. I'd sent one polite message, gave people a choice, and they made it themselves. Finally, she said, "You could have moved your wedding. You could have been the bigger person." I took a deep breath. "Mum, I've been the bigger person for 31 years. Vanessa planned her event on my wedding day. You knew about it and never told me. You cut the money you promised me in half and gave it to her. I didn't fight any of it. I just let people decide where they wanted to be." The line went quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, "This family is falling apart." And then she hung up. I sat there holding my phone, thinking, "No, Mum, this family didn't just fall apart. It fell apart years ago. You just never noticed because I was always the one holding it together. My dad handled things differently. The following Wednesday evening, he showed up at our apartment without calling. Standing on the porch with his hands in his jacket pockets, he asked, "Can I come in?" We sat down at the kitchen table. Claire made us coffee, then quietly gave us some privacy. Later, she admitted she could hear the whole conversation from the bedroom. "I owe you an apology," Dad said. I nodded. "Okay. I let your mother handle everything, and I shouldn't have. The money wasn't fair. The date wasn't fair." I stood by because I didn't want another argument. "I know, Dad. Your wedding was beautiful. I'm sorry I wasn't there from the beginning. You made it to the ceremony. I should have been there all day. I should have told Vanessa to move the vow renewal. I should have told your mother that money had already been promised to you." He stared down at his coffee before saying, "I've spent my whole marriage avoiding conflict, and all I really did was leave the wrong person to fight alone." That hit me harder than I expected. I didn't cry, but it felt like something I'd been carrying for years finally eased a little. "I appreciate you saying that, Dad. I know I can't fix everything overnight," he said, "but I'm going to try." Vanessa and I didn't speak for the next 2 months. She even blocked me on social media, which I only found out because Ty mentioned it. She told relatives I'd humiliated her on purpose, leaving out the part where she'd planned her event on my wedding day, taken half the money my parents promised me, and texted me, "Good luck with your little thing." Later, Uncle Victor told me Brandon had apologized to him at a family gathering I didn't attend. According to Victor, Brandon admitted, "I knew it was a bad idea. I just didn't know how to tell her." That sounded exactly like Brandon. He'd never been good at standing up to Vanessa. About 3 months after the wedding, things slowly started changing. Not all at once, and not with some big family reunion. My dad started calling every Sunday just to check in. He visited us a few times too. One visit, he even brought a housewarming gift for the condo Claire and I had just bought. He never mentioned Vanessa, and neither did I. In November, my mum mailed Claire a birthday card. It was a simple card, but she'd signed it, Love, Mum and Dad. It was the first time she'd included herself in something for Claire that wasn't tied to a family event. Claire smiled and stuck it on the refrigerator. Vanessa and I are still mostly low contact. She eventually unblocked me, but we still haven't had a real conversation. She posted pictures from the Vow Renewal with a caption about intimate celebrations with the people who matter most. I didn't respond. I don't know if we'll ever be close again. Part of me hopes we will because she's still my sister. But I spent too many years always being the one who gave in, and I'm not doing that anymore. If she ever wants an honest conversation instead of another argument about who's to blame, I'll listen. I'm just not chasing it anymore. Claire and I are doing great. We got back from our honeymoon in early October and settled into married life faster than I ever expected. Everything feels new, but somehow it also feels like we've always been here. She still teases me about proposing in the mud, and I still insist it was romantic. Honestly, we're probably both right. Last week, I was looking through our wedding pictures and found one from the reception. It was just Claire and me on the dance floor, both laughing at something I can't even remember. Behind us was a barn filled with string lights, wildflowers, and 84 people who chose to spend that day with us. I looked at that picture for a long time before putting it in a frame on my desk. Nobody forced those people to come. They chose us, and that was enough.